Before 1971, dialysis was scarcely available to Americans suffering from kidney failure. For those who had no access to dialysis, the consequences were often dire. History points to one single event that grabbed the attention of Congress and led to the passage of the Medicare dialysis benefit, which has saved hundreds of thousands of lives. William Litchfield was part of that event. Nearly 40 years ago, he and 5 other dialysis patients traveled to Washington, D.C. to plead their case before the powerful Ways and Means Committee. Mr. Litchfield recently spoke with Kent Thiry and visited the very room where he and these other brave patients argued that no American should be denied this life-saving care.
I did pretty much a crash and burn December the 31st, 1967. I was having serious renal failure. But he didn't have any dialysis at the time, and they were only doing cadaveric transplants, and he didn't want to do a cadaveric transplant. He had one of the 12 Public Health Service grants in the works that was going to, quote, do demonstration in home dialysis. We understood very clearly that having been selected to be on dialysis at that time was a privilege. And because it was a privilege, we felt a great responsibility to do the very best we could with dialysis.
How is dialysis the most different today?
Well, there are several things. Of course, the machine in those days was equivalent to the black rotary telephone. Today's machines are equivalent to an iPod. I mean, the technology is just amazing.
How did it come to pass that you got involved in beginning to advocate for more funding so that more people could benefit?
Dr. Merrill, who was considered to be fairly aloof and you just didn't walk in and talk with him, he gave us this audience. And the one profound thing he said as we finished was, you patients need to speak for yourselves. We need to find all of the other patients that we can in the United States, and we need to get them together to try to advocate. Shep Glazer was one of these patients, and his message was, you've got to get out and advocate for yourselves, because you can't leave it to the doctor or the hospital. You've got to get out and talk to your aldermen. You've talked to your legislators. You've got to talk to your congressmen. We have got to get federal funding on a universal basis for dialysis and transplant, or when this grant runs out, we may die. I got a call the day before we were to appear. Shep's going to dialyze before Congress. Bill, you have to come to Washington and talk him out of it. You're the only person that can talk him out of it. We've all tried, and he is determined that he's going to dialyze before Congress. I was walking down the hall. Shep's coming down the hall, and he's waving his hands at me, and he says, all right, Litchfield, don't you try to talk me out of it. I'm going to do it. I don't care what anybody says. I said, everybody thinks that it's a real stunt. It might backfire. I know, but I'm going to do it anyway. I said, well, Shep, I guess if you're going to do it, well, I'll go in there with you.
And how does it feel for you to know that you are one of the very small band of people who had this impact on federal policy? And since that time, hundreds of thousands of human beings have benefited from a policy that came from that moment.
You know, a lot of times you don't know what is important in history until long after it's done. It turned out, historically, it probably was a very important step in getting the Medicare funding passed. But at the time, we didn't know that. I honestly believe that my survival of 42 years of ESRD is a bigger impact.